Welcome to College Briefing. The content of the briefing includes: could your student debt be about to change? For years, West Australians have been told to save water. So why has the state quietly scrapped its water law reforms? South African Shoprite billionaire Wiese returns to his diamond hunting roots. More young people out of work due to health study. Harvard anti-Semitism official abruptly resigns from new task force. Could your student debt be about to change? ABC. Australia's Education Minister, Jason Clare, is considering changes to the Higher Education Contribution Scheme, HECS, in the May budget, to put more money in the pockets of graduates with lower incomes. The government is considering the recommendations from the biggest review of universities in decades, which have suggested sweeping changes to better financially support students and get more people from low-income backgrounds into university. The recommendations include making sure HECS debts don't grow faster than wages, and changing indexation timing to reduce the impact of inflation. For years, West Australians have been told to save water. So why has the state quietly scrapped its water law reforms? ABC. The Western Australian government has abandoned 18 years of planned water law reforms, raising concerns about the future of the state's fresh water supply reserves. Every other state and territory in Australia has implemented or is implementing legislation to comply with the National Water Initiative, but Western Australia's 6 water laws have remained untouched for over 2 decades. The decision to abandon the reforms has raised concerns about the depletion of Perth's main freshwater source, the Gnangara Mound, and the potential environmental and social risks associated with this. The reforms would have simplified and consolidated the existing laws, ensuring that water was reserved for the environment before being extracted by license holders. The changes would also have given traditional owners a seat at the table. The government has stated that the reforms are no longer necessary due to the existing laws being workable and other avenues being available to improve water security. South African Shoprite billionaire Wiese returns to his diamond hunting roots. Bloomberg. South African billionaire retailer Christo Wiese is returning to his roots in diamond mining. He has spent the past few years working on his mining business, which has already found a $10 million diamond. Wiese's firm, TransHex, plans to hunt for other minerals and metals like gold, lithium, phosphate and platinum, and it has 4 large ships fitted with equipment that can vacuum up gravel from the ocean floor, which is processed on board before the tailings are discarded back into the sea. Wiese, who lost a substantial amount of his fortune in the 2017 collapse of furniture store chain Steinhoff, is described by industry observers as a risk-taker. However, Wiese insists he has no plans to retire and wants to continue working and remaining active. He also plans to continue investing in his various businesses, including Virgin Active and Premier Group. More young people out of work due to health study. BBC. Young people in their early 20s are more likely to be out of work due to ill health than those in their early 40s, according to a report by the Resolution Foundation. Poor mental health among young people is increasing, with 34% of young people aged 18 to 24 reporting symptoms of a mental disorder in 2021-22, compared to 24% in 2000. The study found that young women fare worse, and are 1.5 times more likely to experience poor mental health as young men. The Resolution Foundation is calling for better mental health support in colleges and sixth forms. Harvard anti-Semitism official abruptly resigns from new task force. CNN. Rafaela Sadin, a professor at Harvard Business School, has resigned as co-chair of the university's task force fighting anti-Semitism, less than a month after her appointment. Harvard Business School professor Jared Elias will replace Sadin as co-chair. The university is also facing a separate investigation into its alleged discrimination against Muslim and Palestinian students. Where does the term Stockholm Syndrome come from? Yahoo! Stockholm Syndrome is a term used to explain certain symptoms people exhibit after traumatic situations like abductions and abusive relationships. However, it is not characterized as a mental disorder in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, DSM-5, and some researchers argue that it does not exist as anything other than a cluster of symptoms related to trauma bonding, battered person syndrome, emotional abuse, and learned helplessness. The term Stockholm Syndrome originated from a bank robbery and hostage situation that took place in Stockholm, Sweden, in 1973. During the 6-day siege, the captives began to trust their captors more than the police. The captors showed the hostages kindness and allowed them to call their families, which created a sense of safety for the hostages. The term gained further attention when it was associated with Patty Hearst, who was kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army in 1974 and later identified with her captors. However, Stockholm Syndrome is rare and not simply falling in love with one's abuser. Immigration attorney explains Jose Ibarra's path from Venezuela to Georgia. Yahoo! The accused killer of a Georgia college student came to the U.S. through the border, was arrested a year later, and then released despite an immigration detainer, according to federal immigration officials. Jose Ibarra, 26, is accused of killing Laken Riley, 22, a University of Georgia student, on October 7. He is being held in the Athens-Clarke County Jail. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, officials said Ibarra entered the U.S. unlawfully near El Paso, Texas, in September 2022. He was paroled, then arrested in New York in 2023. ICE said he was released before a detainer could be issued. USC Pac-12 championship hopes receive fatal blow, but Trojans still second in the conference. Yahoo! The USC Trojans Pac-12 women's basketball championship hopes lasted about 42 hours. From the end of the Colorado game late Friday night to the end of Sunday afternoon's loss to Utah, USC harbored realistic aspirations of being able to win a share of the last Pac-12 regular season title in women's hoops. That dream died with the 74-68 defeat dealt by the Utes in a hard-fought game in the Galen Center. Hong Kong's Rainy Day Future Fund now makes up biggest share of city's reserves. South China Morning Post. Hong Kong's financial reserves are shrinking and the city's Rainy Day Future Fund is making up the largest share of the pool. Experts have warned that the government is likely to dip into the future fund earlier than expected due to the struggling economy. They have urged officials to handle the problem carefully or even set up rules for unlocking the fund. The Hong Kong economy is struggling and needs to find a way out, so the fund needs to be used prudently or it will be in danger, said economist Simon Lee Shupa. The Future Fund was set up in 2016 and consists of an initial endowment of 219.7 billion Hong Kong dollars, $28.1 billion, from the city's land fund and periodic top-ups from budget surpluses. It amounted to less than 20% of the city's reserves in 2019, with the proportion rising to nearly 40% in 2023, and it is set to make up almost half this year. Operating reserves have fallen from nearly 60% to under 20% over the same period because of shrinking government revenue and rising expenses. Former Google video generation expert joins ByteDance amid generative AI race. South China Morning Post. Jiang Liu, a key contributor to Google's VideoPoet video generation technology, has joined ByteDance, the owner of TikTok. Liu, who is also an adjunct professor at Carnegie Mellon University, has joined ByteDance's intelligent creation team. This move comes as tech companies on both sides of the Pacific race to advance generative AI tools following the release of OpenAI's Sora. Liu's primary focus at Google was on VideoPoet, a large language model for video generation. ByteDance has also been working on similar technologies, including Pixel Dance and Boximator. What can Japan offer Pacific nations amid growing Chinese influence? South China Morning Post. Japan and Pacific Island nations have agreed to cooperate on a range of issues and combat China's growing influence in the region. However, Japan must also address the concerns of the region, which include climate change, disaster relief, and the discharge of wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear power plant. The issue of wastewater will require greater trust and communication. Japan has agreed to provide explanations based on scientific evidence about the release of treated wastewater. Pacific countries have expressed concerns about the environmental and health consequences of the release of treated radioactive water into the ocean. Japan has supported the region in various ways, including building hospitals, roads, and bridges, and assisting with climate change mitigation and disaster relief. China has also extended economic and infrastructure assistance to the region, raising concerns among the U.S. and its allies. Analysts argue that Japan's assistance to Pacific nations should be based on mutual understanding and cooperation, and should focus on climate change adaptation, economic development, and disaster relief. Sobbing Newington old boys drown out those with real skin in this game. The Sydney Morning Herald. Alumni of Newington College, Sydney, are fiercely opposing the school's move to co-education. The group Save Newington College has launched a legal challenge, claiming the change would destroy the great traditions and heritage that make Newington College the greatest school for boys in Australia. Michelle Casalino, a current parent, has called the opposition hysterical and myopic. Newington College, which is based in Stanmore, announced its plans to admit girls at the end of last year. Questions remain in investigation of death of Augusta University student found on UGA campus. Yahoo! A Venezuelan immigrant accused of killing a nursing student on the University of Georgia's campus last week is in the United States illegally, according to federal officials. Jose Antonio Ibarra, 26, has been charged with felony murder, false imprisonment, kidnapping, and concealing another person's death in the killing of Augusta University junior Laken Hope Riley, 22, on October 7. Ibarra entered the U.S. illegally in 2022, according to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. He was arrested by U.S. Customs and Border Protection and released on parole for further processing. In September 2022, he was arrested in New York City on charges of acting in a manner to injure a child less than 17 and a motor vehicle license violation, but he was released before a detainer could be issued. Riley's death has drawn attention to border security and immigration policies. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp has demanded information from President Joe Biden about the suspect's immigration status and the release of his brother, who is also undocumented. Number 15 UConn women beat DePaul for 25th straight time, 104-67. Associated Press. The number 15 University of Connecticut, UConn, women's basketball team defeated DePaul University 104-67 on Sunday. Paige Buchers led the team with 30 points, while Aaliyah Edwards recorded a double-double with 23 points and 17 rebounds. UConn has now won 25 straight games against DePaul. The Huskies shot 57.1% from the field and had all 5 starters score in double figures. UConn head coach Gino Auriemma remains undefeated against DePaul, with a 25-0 record in the series. Duke tops number 6 North Carolina State 69-58 for second victory over ranked foe in 4 days. Associated Press. Duke beat number 6 North Carolina State 69-58 on Sunday night. The win was the Blue Devils' second victory over a ranked team in 4 days. Taina Mayer scored 19 points and Raygon Richardson scored 15 for Duke. The Wolfpack shot 33.3% from the field and 25% from three-point range in the loss. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Hex, your 6 Degrees observer, bringing you the latest news from around the world. Today, we have a range of stories, from potential changes to student debt in Australia, to the return of a South African billionaire to diamond mining, and the concerning increase in ill health among young people. But first, let me introduce myself. I am Dr. Hex, a resident of the 6 Degrees world, where connections and relationships shape our understanding of the news. Now, let's dive into these stories. In Australia, the government is considering changes to the Higher Education Contribution Scheme, HECS. The aim is to financially support students and increase access to university for those from low-income backgrounds. The proposed changes include ensuring that HECS debts don't grow faster than wages, and altering indexation timing to reduce the impact of inflation. This could potentially put more money in the pockets of graduates with lower incomes. So, if you're a student in Australia, keep an eye out for these changes in the upcoming budget. In Western Australia, the government has quietly abandoned 18 years of planned water law reforms. This decision has raised concerns about the future of the state's fresh water supply reserves, particularly the depletion of Perth's main source, the Gnangara Mound. The reforms would have simplified and consolidated existing laws, ensuring water was reserved for the environment before being extracted. It's a troubling situation, and one that highlights the need for careful management of our precious resources. Now, let's turn to South Africa, where billionaire retailer Christo Wiese is returning to his diamond mining roots. Wiese's firm, TransHex, has already found a $10 million diamond and plans to hunt for other minerals and metals. Wiese, who lost a substantial amount of his fortune in 2017, is described as a risk-taker and has no plans to retire. It's refreshing to see someone with such determination and resilience. Moving on, a report by the Resolution Foundation reveals that young people in their early 20s are more likely to be out of work due to ill health than those in their early 40s. The study shows a concerning increase in poor mental health among young people, particularly young women. The Resolution Foundation is calling for better mental health support in colleges and sixth forms. It's a stark reminder that we need to prioritize mental health and provide the necessary resources for young people to thrive. In the world of academia, Harvard University has faced a setback in its fight against anti-Semitism. Professor Rafaela Sadin has resigned as co-chair of the university's task force, just weeks after her appointment. This comes as Harvard faces a separate investigation into alleged discrimination against Muslim and Palestinian students. It's a reminder that the fight against hate and discrimination is an ongoing battle, and we must remain vigilant in our efforts. Now, let's delve into the origins of the term Stockholm Syndrome. It originated from a bank robbery and hostage situation in Stockholm, Sweden, in 1973. During the 6-day siege, the captives began to trust their captors more than the police, as the captors showed them kindness and allowed them to call their families. However, some researchers argue that Stockholm Syndrome does not exist as a distinct mental disorder and is instead a cluster of symptoms related to trauma bonding and emotional abuse. It's an interesting topic, and one that sparks debate among experts. In the United States, the issue of immigration has once again come into focus. The case of Jose Ibarra, an accused killer who entered the country unlawfully, has raised concerns about border security and immigration policies. Ibarra was released before an immigration detainer could be issued, highlighting the challenges faced by authorities in dealing with undocumented immigrants. It's a complex issue that requires careful consideration and a balanced approach. Now, let's shift our attention to the world of sports. The USC Trojans' hopes of winning the Pac-12 Women's Basketball Championship were dashed with a defeat to Utah. It was a hard-fought game, but USC fell short, ending their dreams of a title. It's a reminder that in sports, as in life, sometimes things don't go according to plan. But the important thing is to keep pushing forward and never give up. In Hong Kong, the city's Rainy Day Future Fund is now making up the largest share of its financial reserves. The government is facing shrinking reserves and needs to handle the situation carefully. Experts are urging officials to use the fund prudently or even establish rules for unlocking it. Economic challenges require creative solutions, and Hong Kong must navigate this situation wisely to ensure its future stability. In the tech world, former Google video generation expert Jiang Liu has joined ByteDance, the owner of TikTok. Liu's expertise in video generation technology will be a valuable addition to ByteDance's intelligent creation team. This move comes as tech companies compete to advance generative AI tools. It's an exciting time for innovation and the development of new technologies. Finally, Japan and Pacific Island nations have agreed to cooperate on a range of issues, including combating China's growing influence in the region. Japan's support for the region extends to areas such as climate change, disaster relief, and infrastructure development. However, concerns about the discharge of wastewater from the Fukushima nuclear power plant need to be addressed. Japan must provide scientific evidence and build trust with the Pacific nations to ensure the environmental and health consequences are properly understood and managed. And that's a wrap. We've covered a wide range of stories today, from student debt in Australia to the fight against anti-Semitism at Harvard. Remember, your thoughts and opinions matter. So, what are your thoughts on these news stories? Do you have any questions for me? Let's continue the conversation and explore the fascinating world of news together. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.